who don't have basic knowledge about Islamic finance and Islamic transactions, maybe it will be a bit of difficult to understand for them.
Oh, is it difficult?
Why is that? However,
is it difficult? Is it honestly? I mean, the question is, because the argument is it difficult, or is it simply because it is these naive people that such institutions are preying on? Because they don't know, they will simply think, well, because it's Islamic and it's, rather than calling it interest, you call it a charge. Therefore, it must be good, because this is the allegation, isn't it? This is something that I think you ought to respond to, which is the argument is that it is very much the illiterate individuals that institutions, and I'm not targeting your institution specifically, but these Islamic Sharia compliant institutions are taking advantage of.
That's a fair question. In fact, for normal people who don't have access to this sort of knowledge, and it's in Islam that lots of people are muqallideen, who's following different school of thoughts and ulama, and we have scholars in Islamic finance who they have extensive knowledge about Islamic finance, about the operations of banking and how things work, and they issued their legal and their Sharia opinion about it, and about using base rate as benchmark, as I quoted AYUFI, the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions,
yes,
and the Islamic Fiqh Academy as well, resolution on that. So for them, it's easier to follow the ruling of those well-known scholars, and we do our best also to educate people and raise the awareness about Islamic finance. The other point about charges, banks charges, that in conventional bank they call it interest, we call it charges.
Yes.
In Islamic bank, maybe lots of people know that to go overdrawn, it's not allowed, because in conventional banks, when you go overdrawn, they charge you interest for that.
Yes.
So this is forbidden for Islamic bank to go overdrawn and these things. However, when a customer, there is a direct debit on their current account, for example, so it's their responsibility to make sure that there is enough balance in the account when the direct debit comes out.
Yes.
If there is no enough balance in the account, this direct debit will bounce back, and this will incur operational process, in fact, to deal with it, which will cause cost for the bank. So the actual charge that the bank charges is to cover its cost, not to make profit out of it. And there is a very important point I would like to highlight. In terms of, for example, conventional banks, when customers, they default on their payment for the loans or the mortgages, they charge them interest and compound interest as well. And this is profit for the banks. For Islamic banks, this is not allowed. However, the scholars allowed Islamic banks as a deterrent measure, so people will not take it easy, to charge reasonable delay payment amount, and this should be paid to charity.
Sure.
So the bank will not benefit of it.
So there's an ethical, I suppose, we've got a call, so before we take that call, I suppose, so therefore there's an ethical element to it as well. So this default payment is given to charity, which I think is a very nice...
The ethical element is within the Sharia circle for Islamic banks. So this is very important point.
Let's take a call. Salaam alaikum.
Right, assalamu alaikum.
What's your name and where you're calling from?
Yeah, my name is Shakat and I'm ringing from Manchester.
Excellent. Now, what's your comment or question in relation to Islamic finance?
I'd like to ask a question actually.
Sure.
In Islamic finance, if you take out a mortgage or if you take out a loan, and if one fails to pay the mortgage or the loan, how is the liability worked out? Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. Very interesting question. So let's assume someone defaults on mortgage payments. What happens? What happens then?
In fact, there is an internal process for the bank here to be fair to the customer and to follow it. What we do is, first, we encourage the customers, get in touch with us. If you are in us, talk to us, we'll make a plan for you.
Right.
So we'll make the plan for the customers. Okay, how much you can...
What's the worst case scenario? Because everyone makes a plan. What's the bottom line? Would an Islamic bank repossess?
This is a right for Islamic banks to do as a last resort.
Right.
As a last resort, and there should be a audit trail for the process that the bank was very fair and give the customer every possible opportunity and
So
chance.
there's no difference between the system that you're there's no difference between the system that you're referring to and the conventional system when it comes to repossessions, because everyone has a plan, undergoes this, that, and the other, but ultimately the repossession will take place.
Ultimately, we will give the customer choice to sell the property, and the bank will take its outstanding amount, and the customer will take its share.
Okay.
On the property. However, as I said, it's very fair process, and at the end, it's a business contract between the bank and the customer, for the objective of the customer acquiring or purchasing the whole property at the end, and the bank is helping the customer with that. But if at certain point of time that the customer is not able to fulfill his or her commitment on that, so the reasonable and the most sensible thing is to get into this agreement, to go out or to get out of this contract, which is fair for both parties, because lots of people, they think because it's an Islamic bank, it's a sort of charitable organization. At the end, it's Islamic bank. It has shareholders who is expecting to make profit of their contribution or their share capital. Yes. There is also depositors on the liability side who deposit their money on a Sharia compliant way for the objective of making profit. So it's really a very, very subtle thing, and the bank will need to make a balance on that front. So people think it should be there shouldn't be any charges. There is lots of cost involved for the bank: operational cost, overhead, staff salaries, lots of costs that the bank will need to cover the cost, and also to make profit, to pay profit for the depositors, to pay profit for the shareholders as well, and benefit at the same time the society, offer the customers finance in a Sharia compliant way as well to help them.
I mean, I mean, obviously, so when it comes to the liability and when it comes to repossessions or potential repossessions, is there anything that would make Islamic banks stand out from non-Islamic banks when it comes to settling such issues, for example? Say if someone can't actually keep up with their mortgage repayments, if you like.
Of course, I believe Islamic banks treat this issue very sensitively, and they are fairer for the customer, and they are very patient with the
Give us an
customer.
example. Because we do know that within the Western or within the UK, if we look at the Financial Services Authority, there's a lot of new guidance that's come in to prevent repossessions, and you have to go to court, get a possession order, and etc., etc. So there's a real there's set processes and procedures for doing so. So tell us how Islamic banks, if you like, are any more sensitive than non-Islamic banks when it comes to this, because it's a very sensitive issue. We're in a very sort of negative economic climate with potential recession looming above. One could say, well, I really want to know, what are the advantages? Okay, this whole Sharia compliancy thing is all well and good, but when it comes to repossession, what Islamic principles are adopted in relation to this?
As I said, it's the fair process. We review it on case-by-case basis. For example, if it happens, and Alhamdulillah, IBB, Islamic Bank of Britain, and the main thing, as an Islamic bank, we have certain measures beforehand. So we make sure the customer is able to afford, and there is a buffer or margin that even if in maybe slightly financial difficulties, the customer will still able to afford the payment, and the customer will not reach to this stage.
Yes.
Unlike conventional banks, and we know the subprime market, the mortgage, and which mainly caused this financial crunch and financial crisis, because they offered mortgages for people who aren't able to afford.
Yes.
Their greed make them offer mortgages for people even they know from the beginning, from the outset, that they will not be able to afford the monthly payments. They give them mortgage and they charge them very high interest rates. So those people defaulted at the end.
Sure, let's take a call. Salaam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
What What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Iqbal. I'm speaking from Newcastle upon Tyne.
Sure. What's your question or comment in relation to Islamic finance?
Yeah, I'm looking at the program, and what it is you guys are saying. I went through this a couple of years ago. I contacted Ayatollah Sistani's office to find out is it possible to do buy-to-let mortgages. If according to Ayatollah Sistani, it's all right to do banking in the Western world with the Western banks. Why do we need Islamic banks in the Western world then?
Sure. Okay, thank you. I suppose this very much focus, again, is a repeat of what Sheikh Yazdani was saying in relation to the Hanafi school of thought.
Yeah.
And obviously you have a similar opinion in the Jafari school of thought, which is because you're in a Western system, for example, you may not necessarily need to go down this route of Islamic banking, because the argument is that it is permissible to have a mortgage anyway. So if that's the case, potentially, well, Islamic Bank of Britain, there'll be no reason for its existence.
I believe, according to my understanding and readings and meetings with the majority of scholars who are involved in this, none, or the majority of the well-known scholars, none of them said it's acceptable for Muslims living in non-Muslim countries to take conventional loans, interest-based loans, or mortgages. However, very, very, very few who said, yeah, because of necessity, and according to this, the Hanafi school, that you may take the conventional mortgages or the conventional loans for necessity. And it's only one sheikh in Kuwait who said that, and maybe I think the sheikhs who said they don't exceed 5, against the massive majority of the scholars who said you be patient, you rent property until you have the Islamic option. Sure. Otherwise, what's the point of
is it really about majority? Because obviously, I mean, because there is obviously also the allegation when it comes to Islamic banks and things like that, that there's a lot of and correct me if I'm wrong, and you may well be familiar with this argument. There's a lot of fatwa shopping that goes around, and many individuals will say, with the utmost of respect, that if you give an Islamic scholar X amount of money, he will give you the fatwa that meets your criterion. I mean, this is what people argue. So how? Because I think by saying, well, the majority of scholars say this, and there may be X amount that are in the minority. How would you respond to that?
I mean,
what difference does it make? The majority could be wrong.
I don't think so. I tend to disagree with you here, because the Prophet ﷺ said, لن تجتمع أمتي على خطأ. My nation will not gather on something wrong. That's why in any rulings, in terms of consensus, any new rulings, we go with the majority of the scholars, of course, when they support their opinion with evidence from the Sunnah and from the Quran and the Sunnah. So there is no way that the majority will go astray or will go wrong.
But there's a difference between the majority and my ummah and a couple of scholars that the Islamic Bank of Britain has got together, isn't there? I mean, is it not that you're taking the hadith out of context?
This committee is based on the minimum requirement for which is minimum of 3 scholars in order to avoid any wrong fatwa. However, they are members.
It's not a huge amount, is it? I mean,
those scholars, they are members of bigger body, which is the Ayufi and the Islamic Fiqh Academy. Sure. Which has a huge number of very and well-known scholars from different parts represent, in fact, the Muslim world, even the Muslim communities in non-Muslim countries as well. And they all are a body and Sharia board for these fatwas and these financial institutions.
I mean, is it not the case? I mean, surely if we look at it from this perspective, because the caller was quoting, for example, Ayatollah Sistani, that's a major scholar with millions of followers around the world when it comes to the Jafari madhab. So we're not talking some guy who's a very small.
We agree, yeah. So some people might disagree, and this is a healthy thing.
Exactly. So is it not the case that those that disagree can go ahead and get their mortgage from a Western bank, and those that have a problem with it can then go and get their mortgage from Islamic Bank of Britain?
Exactly. I agree with you.
Agreeably.
We say some people may disagree.
Yes.
However, we don't say they are wrong. We don't attack them, and they shouldn't do the same as well. Sure. It's an Islamic option. for Muslims. So we shouldn't say it's non-Sharia compliance. It's just changing names, because that's wrong. That's really.
So there's a difference. So to summarise, would you agree? We've got about 30 seconds remaining. That there is a difference of opinion, and for those that believe that that the conventional mortgage is not permissible, Islamic Bank of Britain provides an alternative. And for those that believe that it is permissible to take out the conventional mortgage, that they can go ahead and do it.
Yeah, it will be their responsibility between them and Allah. So we there's disagreement. We don't deny, but the majority, they say if there is no Islamic options, don't go to the conventional until you have the Islamic option. And we don't say they are wrong, and they shouldn't say that we are wrong as well.
Well, Samir Alamad, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And of course, thank you very much indeed to the viewers and all of those that gave their views on the streets of London, where we went earlier. And inshallah, we will see you on next week's show. Thank you very much for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.